everyone, and welcome back to another episode of NOIR TV. I'm your host, Demi Vaughn, and I'm the president of the National Association of Black Journalists. Today, we have a special interview with Amber Stocks. She is a prominent woman in the WNBA. She was formerly an assistant coach with the Los Angeles Sparks and the head coach of the Chicago Sky. Today, we're going to be talking to Amber about her journey through the WNBA and get to know her better. Well, we're back, and hello, Amber. Thank you for joining NOIR TV. How are you this afternoon?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me.
That's great. You're welcome. So I first want to ask you, what brings you to Muncie? What is your connection here to Ball State?
Well, I am very fortunate to be able to live in Muncie, which is very much a family town. It's a family area. I have two young boys, and we initially came to Ball State for Ball State basketball.
Okay, cool. How do you like Ball State?
I love Ball State. First of all, obviously our experience at Ball State begins with basketball. And so, you know, we are all about chirp chirp and supporting, you know, the men's basketball team and the women's basketball team.
Right.
And, you know, basketball is just a family business for us.
Right, cool. So can you take us through your journey to the WNBA initially? I know you played for the University of Cincinnati, so, you know, what was that experience like, and how did that land you into the WNBA?
Well, I was fortunate to have a great high school experience, and throughout high school and the whole kind of AAU circuit with basketball, I was then recruited to the University of Cincinnati to play with Lori Pirtle. And we were a team that really struggled beginning. My freshman year, we were 8-19, which is not very good. Yeah. And then by my senior year, we won Conference USA. And so throughout that process of watching the team grow and evolve, it further inspired my passion and desire to coach. Coaching is something I knew I wanted to do since I was 9 years old. When I was 9, I saw my first female basketball coach. Now, for today's young person, that seems foreign. But if you rewind a couple years ago, not too many years, but just a couple years ago, all the basketball coaches were men. Okay. And I was at a basketball camp, and they said, we have a guest coach today, and in the door walks a woman. And I was floored. And so after the camp, I asked my dad, I said, Dad, what does she do for a job that she has this much free time to coach basketball? And my dad said, well, this is her job. And I said, you can get paid to coach basketball? And my dad said, yes. So at that point in time, at 9 years old, after seeing Nancy Darsh, Melissa McFerrin, and Lori Pirtle come to speak at a basketball camp, I knew I wanted to coach basketball. So again, going back to college, throughout watching the team evolve and go through that journey from, you know, good to great, so to speak, it further inspired my passion and desire to coach. And so upon graduation, I had a great opportunity to go to University of Notre Dame and work with Coach Mickey Marotti at the University of Notre Dame. And then after that, I had two wonderful opportunities presented to me. One was to go play basketball in Spain at Barcelona. And then the other one was to go to the University of Tennessee to work with Pat Summitt and the coaching staff for the Lady Vols. So I thought the choice was obvious. I would go to Barcelona to play. Right. No. Carol Ross gave me some great advice, and the advice that Coach Ross gave was to take the road less traveled, go to Tennessee, and start my coaching career right away. So I packed my bags, moved from South Bend to Knoxville, and started at the University of Tennessee, working with the phenomenal coaching staff there, obviously under the just warm arms of the legendary Pat Summitt, the coach who taught me how to coach, and Mickey DeMoss, Holly Warlick, Al Brown, and Danielle Donahue, and Elisha Bond were all our staff there at Tennessee. From Tennessee, I went on to Xavier University to continue coaching, and was with another great staff at Xavier, Kevin McGuff, Mike Bradbury, Kristen Cole, Nicole Like, Christy Hester, now Christy Mack. We had some great years at Xavier, and from there, Brian Agler was with the LA Sparks, and he had an opening at LA. He gave me a call, and I just trusted Brian, and Penny Toller was the GM at LA, and we went out to LA, and we did some great things there. And in 2016, I was just fortunate to be there when we won the championship.
Right. Well, it sounds like you had a lot of mentors along the way, and there was a lot of female representation. So, that's great to hear that you had that experience. So, considering the fact that you did coach at LA and then you went to coach in Chicago, what was the transition like between those two cities and going from LA to Chicago? Personally, I love Chicago. I've never been to LA, but I love Chicago. So, what was like the transition? Which city do you like more?
Well, I can't say there's a city you like more. I mean, no matter where you live, anyone who's in the sports industry knows you live anywhere in the country. So you can find the beauty in Muncie, Indiana, just like you can find the beauty in Marina del Rey, California, or in South Side of Chicago. All places where I've lived and have thoroughly enjoyed living. Knoxville, South Bend, it's home is where the heart is, and everything is what you make it. I enjoy living across the street from the beach, and I also enjoyed all of the museums and culture, the vibe in Chicago. I enjoyed going to the beach over the summer, Wednesday and Thursday nights when they'd have the DJ down at the beach in Chicago. That was nice. So there's beauty everywhere. If you'll find what you look for. So if you look for the beauty in something, you're going to find it. Right.
And that definitely coincides with journalists as well. With our industry, we live so many different places. So, that is, a good thing to think about, like to find the beauty everywhere, no matter where it is. So. So to talk a little bit more about the WNBA, what do you think are some challenges that the WNBA, like players, face compared to the NBA? What do you think some of their obstacles are?
Well, professional athletes, period, regardless of the sport, have similar challenges. Rest and recovery being vital. That right now there's a lot of buzz about load management, and that's just happens to be a key buzz term right now, but rest and recovery is vital for professional athletes in particular because the schedule is so heavy. And of course, the schedule for all professional sports is intense because it's a money-making industry. The whole industry is dependent upon revenue, which is dependent upon, obviously, all the sales and the business side of it that goes into it. And so the demands on the athletes physically are intense. Now, the one thing that makes the WNBA unique is that in that off season, again, keeping in mind rest and recovery, during the off season, which is when most athletes are able to really recover physically, mentally, and emotionally to gear up for the next season, the off season of the WNBA is during the winter months, and that is prime time for basketball. Most of the athletes, many of the athletes, at some point in their career, if not every year, but at least for a considerable portion of their WNBA careers, continue to play basketball professionally during the off season at one of the various leagues overseas, obviously most prominent, being one of the European or Asian leagues.
Right, okay.
So that really minimizes the ability for them to rest and recover physically, emotionally, mentally. It's year-round grind. Very intense, very demanding physically.
Yeah, I can only imagine that it's demanding physically. So how do you think women of color in particular in sports, how do you think that they're perceived? Do you feel like there are some stereotypes when it comes to African American women in the sports industry, or do you feel like there is no problem?
Well, the first thing I'll say is when you look at sports, you can't really say African American because there are many women of color in sports, many black women who are not Americans. And so whether we're looking at WNBA All-Star dominant player Jonquel Jones, who's Bahamian, or Lindsay Nakazaki. I might be totally butchering her name, I apologize, but are, the prominent Japanese tennis player. So they're black athletes, but they're not African American athletes. Right. They're black athletes and black female athletes competing in sports in the United States. And so just for the black female athlete, is there an additional hurdle? Are there additional stereotypes? I would say yes, but I think there's additional stereotypes for most demographics. Yeah. Stereotypes are very real, and they're not exclusive to certain demographics. One demographic, I don't think can, in spite of the very real obstacles that stereotypes present, it would be unjust, I think, to minimize any stereotype for any particular group. Obviously, black men have stereotypes that come at them very strong. Minorities, other non-black minorities often get ostracized in sports. And then you have anomalies, or what they consider to be anomalies, for other non-black or white athletes, particularly in the professional sports world. And then, of course, we have our sisters who are Muslim, who get stereotyped and have their own obstacles and challenges, particularly when they're trying to compete, not only the challenges they have from the outside judgment, but then from within their community, trying to break away and be one of the first within their community to compete in athletics. So there's a lot of ways where sports expose challenges and stereotypes that are very real every day. Yep. Sports is a platform that can bring a lot of the real world, everyday circumstances to the forefront and bring it into your living room, bring it onto your phone, bring it right onto your Twitter feed or your Instagram page. Sports brings very real topics that often people don't have exposure to. It brings it to the mainstream.
Right. That's a really nice way to look at that. So what qualities do you think a team needs in order to be successful, whether it's a sports team, whether it's an organization? What do you think makes a good team run smoothly together?
There's a lot of different elements that go into team, but there are some things that are just flat out vital. First and foremost, everyone needs to be in the boat, rowing in the same direction. Mm-hmm. And how does that happen? Well, first of all, getting the right people in the boat to begin with. And then even on teams, sometimes you can't always handpick the right people on the boat from the beginning. It might take some time. But then moving people around to different seats on the boat, because as we know, if you're trying to row in a certain direction and you have all the strong rowers on the left side of the boat and all the weak rowers are on the right side of the boat's not going to row in the right direction. Mm-hmm. So the leader and the leadership team, once getting the people in the boat, make sure you strategically position people in certain roles where strengths and weaknesses can be complemented and strengths enhanced and weaknesses minimized. So rowing in the same direction is vital. And again, you can't underestimate how big of a chore it is to get the right people in the boat and to get everybody rowing in sync and in the same direction.
Right.
With that also comes trust. There has to be trust. Trust in the vision, trust in the master plan, and then trust and empowerment for everyone to do their job and to do it well. Mm-hmm. That is whether your team is a family, whether your team is you and your roommate, whether your team is a production team that has to work together, and you have to trust that everyone's going to do their job and do it well. Or it's a sports team. Trust is vital. Nobody wants to start rowing and then turn around and see the person behind them sleeping, knowing that they're having to row 3 times as hard to pick up somebody else's weight. Because what happens is then it erodes trust in the teammate as well as trust in the leadership. Another element that's vital, I think, to any team is the passion and the fun. You know, you want to know that where you're rowing the boat to is a place you want to go, and you're passionate about the destination. Because as we all know, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. But if you're not even excited about the destination, well, the journey can go kick rocks. You're not interested in the journey. So having a desire and a zeal for the destination allows the journey, then the process, to be enjoyable along the way. Not that every day is going to be perfectly fun, but you can even enjoy the tough times together.
Right. Beautiful way to look at it. So do you have any advice for any young women who are in leadership or who want to go into leadership?
Well, my advice to any woman looking to go into a leadership role would be know thyself, know who you are. If at any point during your preschool or elementary days, during parent-teacher conferences, the teacher said any comment about she likes to take charge, or maybe she's a little too aggressive, or any one of those things, embrace it and own it, and smile when you look back at those days, because it was grooming you for who you will be and who you are becoming. Know your the areas where you might have some blind spots, and really look to surround yourself with a trust circle within your industry as well as without, who can be honest with you and give you honest feedback about your blind spots. One of my closest advisors, so to speak, is someone who knows nothing about basketball, but she will keep it real with me on anything. And if I say, man, I had a really rough day at practice, she might say, well, I've noticed you've been really impatient the past couple days, just period. So you might want to catch up on your sleep because you don't really seem to be yourself right now. That has nothing to do with the industry, but as a leader, having that feedback, having people in your circle who can give you a real life mirror and be able to mirror back to you things that are going on, I think is vital. And then of course, having a circle within your industry who can often see the forest as you as a leader might be looking at all the trees.
Right, mentors, they're very vital. Well, I think that pretty much concludes our interview. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us today. It was really nice meeting you.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, no problem. And we hope to see more of you around Ball State and with NABJ as well.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, that's all for today's episode of NOIR TV. As always, thank you for joining us for another episode. Again, I'm your host, Demi Vaughn, and we'll see you next time.